What is a sports anchor, and how did they get started? Television networks are the major employers for full-time sportscasters, as well as sports-specific channels like ESPN. It might be interesting to know that the majority of sportscasters today are men. However, female sportscasters are closing that gap continually. I'm Joni Sutter, and on today's show, we're going to introduce you to ESPN anchor Karl Ravech. Karl has been with ESPN for almost 22 years. He has been a sports center anchor since 1993 and has hosted ESPN's coverage of Major League Baseball and the World Series since 1995. He is the prime host for Emmy Award-winning Baseball Tonight, as well as hosting some other sports programming for ESPN like College Hoops Tonight and ESPN Golf. Karl, it's so nice to meet you, and welcome
Thanks,
to Nutmeg TV.
Good to be here. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. We're not going to talk about baseball, though.
I'm good with that. I talk about it all my life. I'm happy not to.
And you do a great job talking
you.
about it. But we're going to talk about the business. We're going to talk about getting into television and what it means to get into television, because guys like you make it look so easy to do the play-by-play and to do some of the color, to do the interviews, and it's not easy. It takes a lot more than knowing about the sport and, you know, being good in front of the camera. Sure. There's a lot of energy and effort that goes into it, and we're hoping that this interview with you, and thank you for agreeing to do this because you had a very successful career, and to let people into what it takes to be in the business on a day-to-day basis, I think will help people. And perhaps they'll utilize facilities like Nutmeg TV to shoot footage, right, to edit B-roll together and put sports packages together, or news packages together.
To tell stories, yeah, I'm sure.
Stories.
I agree with that.
Sure. Good. So, but let's get started with, how did you get into being a sports reporter and a sports anchor?
Well, I think like most of the people that are at ESPN, and I can speak to that because I've been there for over 20 years, we all, at least the ones on the air and many behind the scenes, came from local television. I grew up in Needham, Massachusetts, not far from here, and I remember sitting in my guidance counselor's office my junior year, heading into my senior year, with my folks and a guidance counselor, and she asked the question, you know, what are you interested in? You know, and most juniors in high school, they don't have a great deal of knowledge of, like, well, I think I want to do this. I want to be a an astronaut. I want to be a doctor. I want to be a dentist. And I didn't know that either, but I did know that I liked sports. I mean, if you took the question literally, what are you interested in? I'm interested in sports. And given that the next step was going to be college, there had to be some academic side to this whole thing, and I enjoyed writing. So the writing and the sports combination led her to suggest maybe, a communications background, education could lead to something that you'd be interested in. I had, prior to that, never thought of it. My senior year, I wrote for a local paper in Needham covering a hockey team, and got a real big charge out of seeing my name in the paper, written by, that was a real cool kind of ego-feeding feeling, which was kind of neat. And ended up attending Ithaca College for television, radio, and had a great 4 years recognizing right away that the real education for somebody in our field was what was going on in the studio like this, like we have here at Nutmeg TV, Ithaca College Broadcasting, and that led to a job literally at a local cable access station in Ithaca, New York, a Cable News Center 7, which was public television, and then on to Binghamton, New York, and Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and then ESPN. So it was a conversation with a guidance counselor that ultimately led to what it's become.
Do you also do sports journalism?
Yeah, I think that what we do is sports journalism. I mean, if you use journalism as a definition, meaning you're a reporter, you're not just somebody who literally reads teleprompter and delivers highlights, but there's some reporting that goes on. I think the best part of the early years in television, certainly in college, was to do radio, was to write, was to then go out as a reporter in Binghamton as a news reporter 3 days a week and do weekend sports. Those types of experiences make you better at whatever you're going to do. I mean, the more that you experience every side of this industry, it allows you to relate to the on-air people. It allows you to relate to the camera people. If you edit your own highlights, you understand what an editor is going through against a deadline. If you shoot your own highlights, which we had to, and I did in Binghamton, New York, and in Ithaca, you empathize with. I didn't white balance the camera. The battery died. You can relate to everything, and I think that endears you to everybody in the studio. And you got to produce your own shows. And if you can produce your own shows, and eventually you end up on the air at ESPN, you can understand some of the challenges that a producer goes through as well. So, yeah, I think there's a journalistic side to what I do because I want to be a journalist as well as an anchor or a play-by-play person.
How vital do you think the degree in journalism was to get started?
I think it helped. There's so many creative people out there now, and there's so many avenues for broadcasting, the internet, social media, that type of background. I think while it's important, and I certainly encourage people to go to school for that. I think we've seen a number of people kind of emerge who didn't have that background, but they had a message. They were creative. They were intuitive. And they became sort of, by virtue of whatever it is they produced, content-wise, somebody that executives would turn to say, we want them, on our team. So the journalism piece of it, Ithaca had a great journalism program, a great communications program. There's hundreds. There's so many programs around the country, college-wise, that offer this because I think it's an exciting, interesting field. You're not sitting behind a desk, and I think that appeals to a lot of people every day. And trust me, it's a challenge because when I went to work in Binghamton as a weekend sports anchor, and the weekday guy left, I wasn't promoted. I then went to graduate school in Binghamton because I figured this isn't going to really work out. Somebody's telling me that you're not our guy. And you have to develop sort of. So I went to a program on management and leadership as a graduate program in SUNY Binghamton because I wasn't sure.
I saw that you have your master's degree in management and leadership.
You're
because
making no money.
You thought the handwriting was on the wall.
I sure did.
They picked somebody else.
The handwriting was in my face when he said, "Look, we're going to have somebody. We're going to do auditions, and we'll consider you." And then a couple of weeks later, you're told you're not our guy, and you've put in the 2 to 3 years time, and you don't get promoted. And with all due respect to Binghamton, New York, it's Binghamton, New York. This isn't even a market that's
right.
That's appealing to many. It's a great jumping off point, and if you can't jump off,
I think it was 47th, something like that.
You can't jump off from the jumping off point, we're in trouble. Binghamton was 132nd market. Harrisburg ended up being in the mid 40s, but when I couldn't jump off from there, I thought to myself, and I remember my dad, when I had a conversation with him, the implication was, well, why don't you come back home and get a real job? Let's start all over again. So thankfully, I didn't take that advice.
Thankfully you didn't, but that's something that happens all the time. It's real life. It's real life. And so kids who go for a degree in film or something else, I can imagine the parent going, okay, let's come home, let's start again,
right.
Let's, because it's
I had
so
a rejection.
competitive.
You're holding a notebook there. I had rejection letters the size of a phone book, yellow pages, of reasons that I wouldn't be the next hire at a particular station. I mean, having grown up in Needham, my goal was always initially to work my way back towards the East Coast, whether it be Rhode Island or Maine or New Hampshire. None of those places were willing to hire somebody who was in Binghamton, New York, who had local connections. So all the things that you might think would work in your favor, that doesn't always happen.
What did you do with that on the inside?
I'd like to sit there and say that it motivated me, and I think on some levels it did. But clearly, initially, you're sort of shocked. I remember I walked outside and sat on a bench and was wondering what do I do now? I mean, it seemed like a natural progression, and many people, I think, in our field are go-getters, are people who are used to succeeding and achieving. And when you're told, you may not be something that's going to work in the future, it's kind of a gut check time. But You devise plans, figure out ways to kind of make yourself more marketable, and hope, that somebody, and it only takes one. I mean, that's the beauty of our business, is it only takes one person to say, I want Joni to come work for us.
But you've got to be ready.
You got to be ready. But while 50 others could say, we're not hiring you.
Right. Going into the management side of it and taking that time and getting your master's degree, that must have well-rounded you in other areas too, because you were, adding to your repertoire, so to speak, of what you had to offer.
Look,
leadership.
The most important part of that particular period was literally interacting with other adults, seeing that there's more to what goes on in a community, in a college setting, than just broadcasting at a local TV station. That type of interaction was motivating. It was invigorating. That sort of period of you may not be good enough. You're out there with other people, and you realize there are other assets that you have. That if the TV thing doesn't work, there's plenty of other avenues to get into, and even within television. I mean, part of the leadership and management was, when you work in television, they need managers, they need leaders, and even within the confines of ESPN now, you do recognize that on a particular program, there still has to be voices of leadership and even people that can relate to management. So there clearly was a benefit to all that, but I think really on its foundation, it was just interacting with other adults who were also trying to better themselves by learning new things.
That's wonderful. Did you have to travel a lot to rise up the ladder of, to get to the next step? Were you traveling a lot with your sports reporting?
The traveling part of it was less then at local TV, far more greater now at ESPN. But the traveling part, which I think is vital to people who want to get into this field, is when I'm in Ithaca, New York, or Binghamton, New York in particular, and I really focus on Binghamton and Harrisburg as much as anything else. If the goal is to eventually graduate from Binghamton, New York, it became quite apparent to me that this is a very incestuous business. Everybody knows everybody, because most people have come from some place and gone to another place, and they have contacts now in the places you're at. So the truth of the matter is, when I got my job in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, it was because while I was in Binghamton, New York, I had driven to Rochester, New York, to meet news directors. There were no jobs there, but meet a news director in Rochester, New York. I'm back in Binghamton, New York, and there's a job opens up in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And I send a tape to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. It's at least one that's being considered. The news director has a sports director in Harrisburg who says, I know my best friend's a news director in Rochester, New York. I'm going to call him and see if he knows anybody who might be interested in sports that's come across his plate. Long story short, Greg Mace, who's in Harrisburg, speaks to Steve in Rochester, and Steve in Rochester said, a couple of weeks ago I met this guy, Karl Ravech. He seemed like he knew what he was doing. And Greg said, wow, we have his tape right here. So that connection gave me an advantage. Driving to Rochester helped me in Pennsylvania. They had nothing to do with each other when I went, but that type of contact, I tell anybody who's involved in this industry at any level, meet as many people as you can. Network, because you never know when a contact you made in this place is going to end up knowing somebody or being in the next place you try to go to.
Now that you're at the top, and you really are at the top, Karl, you're at the top.
We're at the top there?
There's
nowhere to go but
there's more places to go, but you're at the top, and you should be so proud, and I'm sure that you are. But do you still have to continue that? Do you still have to network? Do you still have to do that kind of thing?
Yeah,
because there's so much competition?
Well, it's no doubt about that. And where we're at now, you have contracts that sort of guarantee you some type of employment for a period of time. I think where I now network in my job is not necessarily to look where the next job's going to be, but how do you make yourself more valuable in the job you're in now? So that means establishing relationships, in my case, with people in in Major League Baseball, with people at Little League, with people at the College World Series.
And with the viewer.
And with the viewer. Because I think ultimately that connection to the viewer is critical and comes from what I think is the ultimate key for people in my position is credibility. If the viewer watches me or anyone else on ESPN or any other network and feels as if they are given a window into the inside of Major League Baseball or the Little League World Series or College World Series or whatever it may be, that I now have Joni saying, you know what, if I really want to get the truth here, I'll go to that guy or that woman because they know the people who are making the decisions. And I think too often in our field, people get to a particular level, they either get complacent or their job is to just do highlights. And those relationships, that networking part of it, makes you a much, much better, I think, more credible host or anchor.
Right. So you know what you're saying is believable.
Is believable.
And it's
because
there.
it comes from the people that make those calls.
What kind of mistakes do new reporters make? Not the veterans, the new reporters.
Yeah, the new ones. I think going back to some of the things I've learned is you can't report hearsay. I mean, you really got to vet out a story. You don't want to, and that happens to veterans too, because there are people out there, in my case, agents who represent players who want particular things reported that may not be factual, but it serves an interest to them to sort of get this out there. Baseball players negotiate free agent deals all the time. If an agent will tell you, hey, kind of keep this on the down low, but Team X is offering my guy, $80 million for 4 years, and that's something we report, well, that may not even be true, but it may trigger Team Y to then call the agent and say, ooh, I heard you got another offer, so we're going to offer him $90 million. And you got to be very careful of that, even as a veteran. Hearsay, jumping to conclusions, not vetting out the facts, that's probably a rookie reporter mistake.
Do you in your position now have to find your own stories?
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. I mean,
so you still have to find some of your own stories.
You have to find them. If somebody gives you a clue that there's a story out there, you then have greater resources to tap into to find out what the truth is. Just because something's on Facebook or Twitter doesn't mean it's true, but when you see something come across that is in part of your circle, you can certainly call people to say, hey, I heard this, and then based on your experience, their reaction is pretty telling. If there's hesitation, if there's but you do know you're onto something, and then of course you follow it up. There's a great thrill in that journalistic side of it. There's no doubt about it. I mean, breaking a story or being involved in it, knowing something. Information is power. When you know something, whether you can report it or not, eventually it will come out. You know the story. That's a good feeling. It's a great feeling.
Are you intense in your job?
I'm intense about certain things. You're very competitive. I mean, whether it's in Binghamton, New York, where we were following a local girl who was trying to make a United States gymnastics team, or it's at ESPN, trying to get a scoop on a player signing a free agent deal. Yeah, you're very competitive, which is why you go back to the days in Binghamton where you don't get a job, and that competitive fire, either gets doused or gets reignited.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's an intensity, but geez, it's fun. I mean, I enjoy, you got to have fun with it. It's sports too. That's one of the reasons I ended up in sports and not news. It's fun. We're not talking about some of these horrible things that are going on.
Right. Do you have a manager as an anchor? Do you have somebody that manages your career? Does an anchor, whether you or someone else, does an anchor typically have an agent or a manager for themselves?
Typically we do. I don't. I had one early in my career. I would say if I've been at the ESPN 22 years, the last 15, roughly, I've negotiated all my own deals for two reasons. I feel like I have a fairly good feel for what people in my position are earning. I don't need to pay 3 to 5 or 10% of what I'm earning to somebody. And again, it goes back to the relationships you have with the people that are making these decisions, and a trust. I don't think that they're trying to take great advantage of me. They don't think I'm trying to take great advantage of them. And, we report on people that are making hundreds of millions of dollars, and the question we always ask is, what's the difference between 82 million and 97 million? Is it really a big difference? In my case, I'm comfortable with the salary that I earn and don't use an agent. Many other people do.
So it depends.
It depends.
Did you ever get in trouble? Did you ever, I mean, obviously, sometimes people say the wrong things.
Yeah.
Or they report a statistic or something that maybe wasn't accurate. But in your career, did you ever get in trouble?
Never really. Not egregiously. I mean, I don't recall, being called into a.
Or have you seen anchors that you?
Yeah, manager's office. Sure. I mean, whether it's a slip of the tongue and a curse word, somebody gets suspended for that. Even if your microphone is not supposed to be on, and mysteriously it is,
sure.
and you say something, you can get in trouble for that. I'd say I've been lucky that way, because I've certainly have said things that, if they were heard, would probably get me in trouble. But I've been around people who've done it by mistake. And there's a level of accountability that you have to have. You learn that. I mean, you talk about a young reporter's mistake. Anytime a microphone or camera's on, you're on. So you've got to be very careful. Mm-hmm. I remember learning a great lesson when I was an intern in Massachusetts. The reporter was in the field looking at a camera like this, and his IFB wasn't working. He wasn't able to hear the producer, so he literally stepped out of the way and held up a sign in front of the camera that said "No IFB," which was a great visual clue to the director and the producer, like, he can't hear, so we can't go to that person. That's a valuable lesson that I learned as an intern, and these types of things just kind of stick with you. But no, I've never, knock on wood, been in trouble, but I've certainly have seen people be reprimanded. Most of the offenses aren't fireable because they're human error and they happen.
So what we're saying is, through these questions, is there's a great deal of accountability. There's a great deal of, in order to have credibility, you have to have accountability, and you have to have ethics, and you have to conduct yourself that way. And if you do, you're not going to have problems.
You're a brand. I mean, ultimately, you are your own brand, and you're your own manager of your own brand. And certain people choose to manage their own brands in certain ways. I mean, whether it be musicians, whether it be movie stars, whether it be supermodels, anchors, baseball players, whatever it may be, they're ultimately in charge of what they want the public to see, their image. We've seen football players get in trouble with domestic violence. We've seen baseball players donate millions of dollars to hospitals. It all depends on you managing your own image. It's no one else's fault.
Is there a don't-do list for journalism? Is there a don't-do list, like, when do you know when to push, and when do you know I'm pulling back here?
Yeah, I think that I think you have to guard against becoming very friendly with the people that you're covering, reporting on, because you really need to maintain a level of objectivity with regards to the sport, the people, the managers, the executives. If you become friendly with them, I think, and I think we run into this with a lot of ex-players who become analysts. They're torn between being inside the clubhouse with their teammates, and then subsequently their friends, and being on TV and being objective about a performance. I've no question we run into that all the time with sitting across from a former baseball player, and you know that he's not being truthful about a particular play that was or wasn't made, because he's a buddy. I'm not going to sell him out. I'm not going to do that. And and to the viewers' credit, they see right through that. The best analysts that I work with are the ones who are the most honest, and the ones that are the most honest generally don't particularly care, as long as they're telling the truth, what other people might think.
Isn't that hard to network then? You're networking, you're building these relationships, and then you've got to be you've got to be totally honest.
Yeah, it's a balancing act. I find that most athletes and other people you cover respect that you have a job to do, as long as you're not doing it with any malice. If you're not out to hurt somebody, I think that they respect what you're doing. And if you're saying something negative about somebody, or you're reporting something that they did, as long as it's factual, they did it. They get that they were in the wrong here. and it's going to be newsworthy. Protecting people out of friendship or loyalty when you're supposed to be reporting on a story isn't going to help.
Mm-hmm. And like you said, the viewer sees through that, and that doesn't help the charisma for the...
Credibility,
No,
it does
no,
nothing.
none of it.
They'll go find the real story.
How does sports reporting differ from hosting? If you're hosting baseball tonight
Yeah.
versus, maybe, being an actual reporter on set,
Right.
there's a difference. I mean, you have to, let's say the producers, first of all, do you produce that show?
We have, no, there are producers for the show. Baseball
Okay.
Tonight has its own producers. It has its own coordinating producers.
So if you have producers, they have a vision.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you have the ultimate power, control of making that vision become a reality or not become a reality on the show.
True.
Because they've made their vision. You've got to be on that
Right.
on that bandwagon.
Right.
Now here comes the show. You've got to take that vision and turn it into a reality or not.
Mm-hmm.
How does that work if you don't share their vision?
Well, ideally, trust has to be the most important thing that goes on. I mean, there have been times where, and again, I think that speaks to 22 years there, it speaks to relationships you have, that the producer has got to trust that the host, at least if it's somebody that they do trust, is going to take this in the direction it needs to go. By the same token, the host needs to trust that the producer, given that producer has had great experience and understands the landscape of the sport that they're talking about, the personalities of the people involved, the same thing for me. I need to trust that they're going to take us to the next logical step in this. But ultimately, the difference between hosting and reporting, I don't distinguish it. I mean, clearly there are reporters who are in the field, in the clubhouse, in the locker room, talking to the players after a game. And if we're sitting on the set after a World Series, we're not asking the questions directly to the pitcher who just completed the game. We're responding to the answer that the pitcher gives. But I think the distinction comes when the host just accepts whatever is said as that's the end of that discussion and doesn't flush it out, or doesn't have the experience to say, I'd like to ask you what I really think he's saying, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong. So I don't make the distinction. I think that's a mistake to distinguish yourself as host or reporter. You should be both.
It's been said that your strength as a host is your memory. Is that
funny.
true?
I don't know that. If somebody were to ask me what I think my strength is, it's the ability to kind of hear and listen to what the analyst next to me is saying and follow up. I think one thing that we don't do a great job of in our field as hosts, if you will, is to listen to what the other person is saying. It would literally be if you said something about, your jacket's unbuttoned, and I didn't hear you, and I'm going on and saying, I think that the most important thing is my ability to be a traffic cop. Too often we don't hear what either the interviewee is saying, the interviewer is saying, somebody is in your ear. You've got to listen. If you don't listen, and you just have a list of questions, and I've noticed that you have a list, but you're following up on some of the things I say. Too often, back to the reporter mistake, if I can for a second, is there's a list, and you ask me a question, and I say something just completely outrageous, and you go to the next question. So that's a mistake. To answer your question, the memory thing, I think people are impressed by it, but I mean, let's be honest. I have producers and researchers in my ear who are handing me things that make it maybe seem like my memory is great. But when you enjoy something, like I do sports, you tend to remember certain things. And given technology today, you can look something up right away to refresh your memory. And I do that all the time. If my analyst is talking about something, I can quickly on my phone or my computer look something up while he's on camera. And then, oh yeah, that's right, I remember. This is the person's name. This was the year. This was the hit. This was the pitch. And you sound well informed. I don't mean to dismiss this idea like I don't know anything, but there are tools that we all can use to make ourselves not smarter, but just more well informed. But I think it's the ability to challenge the people that are sitting with me, to hear what they say, and to follow up with some of the things that they say. I have a good BS detector, I think. I know when somebody is saying something that you're not sincere. Like we just had a meeting where we talked about all this, and now we're on TV, and you're not saying it. So they know if you're sitting out there with me, I'm going to get it out of you. You said it once. Now we're in front of all these people. You're not going to say it. What happened?
Right. And let's go back to the list for a minute, because a lot of times, an interviewer can have a list, and the interviewee doesn't want to deal with what maybe they're going to be asked, so they go on a nice roundabout way. And I think it's important for the interviewer to also be able to recognize that, to go back in
Absolutely.
and to really get, because people can,
sure, they have
do their
agendas. There are certain things they don't want out. But and the other part of that is that there are a lot of times where I've seen interviews that I've done, and the interviewee will open up doors. They will open up doors that if you listen,
real gem there.
you can go in. Like, wait a sec. He just brought me to a place I didn't think we were going to go. Let's go further down. Let's table the list.
Yes.
And follow this up, because maybe there's something that they do want to say that you didn't even think they wanted to say. So again, the listening part of it and trusting your instincts to go with it is really important.
That's experience, Karl. That's experience. And I think that's what people that are starting out, you have to do a multitude of interviews. You have to keep going, because that's experience. That's an innate wisdom that you have to be able to have, because that's where you're going to find that gem.
Right.
Where that person does open the door
Right.
and let you go in. And you would miss the gem if you went back to the list.
Right. And don't be afraid to say, what did you mean by that? What did you just say? I'm not sure I understood what it was you said. Because there are times where somebody will say something and you're not exactly sure what he or she meant. Don't be afraid to ask. Say, what do you mean by that? The open-ended questions are vital. The yes/no questions are killers. Because there's very good chance that the person you're interviewing, if they don't want to answer a question and you ask a yes or no question, they're going to say, hey, do you remember being there that night? No. Oh, okay, well what can you tell me about your memory of that night? So it's not a yes or no thing, and that's certainly something that's imparted on us all the time.
Do you enjoy being the voice of the fan?
I love that. Yeah, and I think that's...
What's so wonderful
well,
about
because
that
I think, if you're covering 30 baseball teams, it's very easy, I think, to put on the hat of the Cincinnati Red fan or the Padre fan, the Red Sox Yankee fan, whoever it may be, and it does allow you to question the Curt Schillings or the John Kruk's or the Aaron Boones to say, well, why didn't he throw that pitch? Why did he take that extra base? What was the manager thinking there? I'm sitting there as a fan in the stands, and I'm wondering this. So you guys are the experts. You tell me what you think he was thinking, or what you would have done in that situation. Yeah, being the voice of the fan or asking the question of the fan, I think that's really important. That's something that I always say to myself before every highlight we do. What is that guy or that woman in the stands or that kid thinking about when Matt Kemp decides not to run out a ball that he hits to right field? What is that about? So yeah, I think that hat of the fan is important.
What about charisma? Because you have to have a certain amount of charisma in order to appeal to the fan. You could have someone who appears as an anchor and they know all the facts and they have good analysis and they have some good networking, but there's no charisma there. The fan isn't feeling it. They're
Right.
not. You're not like
You're not
one
connecting.
of them.
I think if charisma and passion are the same thing, I'm not one of those who are big into shtick, and we have a lot of people at ESPN who've made a living off of sort of a shtick. But I think most of the people there that I know are passionate about sports. They're passionate about their teams. They're passionate about their athletes. They're up, they're down, they get high, they get low. They grew up either playing or certainly watching and participating in sports. It's a field full of passion. You can't really be involved with sports and not have a particular fire or energy or level of anger that is expressed when something doesn't go your way. So I think most of the people there at ESPN have that passion, whether it be for Syracuse University or the Arizona Diamondbacks or some Little League team. We all, at some point, participated, and I think that's where the charisma shows up, and the passion shows up. They get that you're a sports fan. It'd be difficult to go into that building at ESPN and not be a fan of sports, at its root.
Yeah, it would definitely come across.
Yeah, like he hates sports, she hates sports.
Yeah.
Why are they here?
What did you play when you were young?
I played all sports. I was a soccer player, basketball player, tennis player, baseball. I played them all, which is why I often, especially when we get to the Little League World Series, make it a point to encourage kids while we're watching the sort of the best of the best play baseball. Understand that they're also football players and basketball players and bowlers and then the extracurricular activities. You cannot do just one thing. Even at 50 years old, hand-eye coordination, the ability to use your feet, all come from soccer and basketball and tennis and golf, whatever it may be, that if you specialize in one sport at a young age, it's very limiting, leads to injuries. You got to be well-rounded. And every analyst, every guy that I sit there with and ask, did you just play football? Did you just play soccer? Did you just play baseball? I've never heard one of them, not one. And these are Hall of Famers. These are top-of-the-line athletes say, yep, just one. When I was 12, I decided I'm going to play baseball, and that's it. Every one of them, really through their high school and teenage years, played multiple sports.
What goes into some of those famous ESPN spots, and are they fun?
Yeah, they're humorous. They're great.
I mean, they're long and arduous.
They actually are. I mean, that's, you work in this field, and people, I hope, will be encouraged to work in this field based on our own conversations. But things like the commercials, for instance, Baseball Tonight, we did a whole campaign that was based on movie scenes. Different from the Sports Center spots, but Baseball Tonight did this movie theme thing for a couple of years. And there are so many great baseball movies, Bull Durham and League of Their Own, whatever it may be. There's no crying in baseball. And we would spend 8 to 10 hours to shoot a 30-second commercial. And you realize that the director is watching the movie scene here, and then he's watching your scene right here. And the staging needs to be exact. I mean exact. Pictures need to be exact. Your mannerisms need to be exact. That Kevin Costner speech I once delivered in a Baseball Tonight commercial about the deep, soft, slow, wet kisses that last 3 days. And we did that. First of all, I have to look at Peter Gammons, who's a man dressed up as Susan Sarandon. So that alone is a problem. But having to learn...
That was probably the problem.
That was a big problem. But having to learn these things and use the mannerisms, it's painstaking. But to your point, that part of ESPN, the commercials, without question, people remember those way more than anything that's ever happened in a Little League game or on a set of Baseball Tonight.
You said that. I read that you said that.
Without question. That's legacy stuff. That stuff's time capsule to me stuff. People will always go back and go on YouTube and see how silly they were. And they are silly, dancing with the 7'7" basketball player, punching the Syracuse orange. And I was there when they first started. They took on such a life of their own, and athletes wanted to be a part of it. And it's one of these sort of organic things that has just become gold.
Do you enjoy it?
I honestly don't do too many more of them because I don't really do SportsCenter the way I once did, and they really want to focus on the SportsCenter people. Having had done it, I'm grateful that I had the chance to do it.
But now you have your name in credits of a movie.
I do, yeah. The $1 Million Arm. That was neat. I mean, again.
Nice trailer.
Yeah, the trailer.
I'm going to watch the film now.
Have you not seen it?
And I haven't seen it.
See it. It's a very good movie, actually.
I encourage you as a viewer to do it because there's Karl. Now you have acting.
The success of the movie has nothing. I promise you. The trailer that you saw.
I saw you in the trailer.
Which is about 15 seconds of us. The other 15 seconds is what's in the movie. So we're in the movie for about 30 seconds, but it was part of the trailer. It's funny.
Great movie.
It is a good movie.
Yeah.
The funny part of it is when people see you in a movie theater, they come and say, oh my God, I saw you in a movie. Like you were in a movie. And somehow it seems like they failed to make the connection between you're actually somebody on TV and now you're in a movie. It's more of you're a movie person now.
Yeah.
That's a strange connection for me.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
It's virtually the same, really.
That's the point.
Apparently, in
And
the
you're
public
playing,
side,
I'm
it's
not playing anybody. I'm doing what I do for a living.
Right.
So that part of it was a bit entertaining. But by the same token, if you're on Twitter and any of these folks that are watching, however you get your message out there, Facebook, Twitter, TV, movies, radio, newspapers, you're appealing to perhaps a different part of the audience that doesn't watch TV. They're going to take their kids or their grandkids to a movie to watch about a couple of Indian folks who become baseball players. So wow, I didn't put Ravech and Schilling together with baseball, but now I do. So you're always trying to broaden your audience, and that was fortunate.
Are you responsible for your social media? I mean, do they say as an anchor, okay, for those who we're talking about being in the business here, do you have to push your own social media, or do you have somebody that does that for you?
I do my own. I don't know what other people do. I think most of it is driven by the individual. Mm-hmm. We're encouraged because it's another platform for us to grow our own brand, and certainly the ESPN brand to do it. I don't have a Facebook page. I don't really have a great interest in being on it. But the Twitter stuff, I think, is a source of information for sure. Mm-hmm. It allows me to share views and thoughts that I think might be relevant to a fan of a particular team. You can certainly deliver some news that way. I mean, the guy Buster Olney, who I work with as a reporter,
right?
He has 1 million followers. Again, that speaks to.
You have quite a few too.
Yeah, but not 1 million. I mean, anybody that can offer this sort of inside information, that's what the fan and the viewer want. They want to feel like they're getting something that the person next to them may not have.
Directly from you.
From me, from him.
That's
for sure.
what the tweet is.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, Karl just tweeted this out, and it's coming to me.
Especially if you respond directly to somebody, that really gets them excited.
Oh, absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely. Do you take time with your fans when you're out at a game?
I do. I mean, I never turned. I don't turn people down, because all it takes is one to start the fire of, boy, he wasn't a nice guy, or he was.
Or if you waited in line for so long to.
I just think that we have to be very careful of how we treat people, their fans, their viewers. Take the time to acknowledge them, sign something if they're asking. Don't sort of just brush them off. I'm not one to do that. If somebody's willing to ask, I'm gonna pay attention.
Well, you being here today is an example of that. And so before we close, I just want to say that, you came here to Nutmeg TV when we had a discussion about what we're going to talk about today, you were willing to say, yeah, let's talk about the business. Let's inspire somebody who wants to come in to TV to say, no, it's not easy. Yeah, there's a lot of competition, but you know what? Nose to the grindstone, you're going to have failures. You're going to have people who say, no, you're no good. We're not hiring you.
Right.
But keep going. But also well-round yourself.
Yeah.
So if it doesn't work out at that period of time,
right,
you can do some other things. And all it takes is that one person to say yes.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, you're still making a living. You're still able to, get on with your life and be passionate about what you're doing. I think that encapsulates it all. Is there anything else that you wanted to say today to the viewer about your travels, your path in life, wisdom about what they need to do, what steps they need to take?
Well, I think in any, I have 2 boys, one of whom is in college trying to get into this field. I think that the lessons that you learn along the way, most important is you got to have faith in yourself. You trust yourself because there will be people who, and this is a very subjective field, and it's not just for people who are in front of the camera. Somebody may take a picture and think it's art, while somebody else or a number of people will think it's not. It doesn't make sense to them. Have a great deal of faith and confidence in yourself and your abilities. Continue to learn. Do that networking thing, because I do believe that good things happen to hard workers. Not necessarily good people, but if you're really working hard and you're passionate about something, that will eventually shine through. And in our field, of television, which to me now involves so many other things as we provide content for the internet, by sitting on a set, the social medias, is that there are so many opportunities now that even when I was sort of going through it didn't exist, that do exist now. There's a whole host of sports networks out there. There's entertainment channels. There's clearly news channels. There are opportunities in a field which allow you, when you go to work in the morning and go home at night, to put your head on a pillow and think, well, that was really, really cool, and I'm looking forward to tomorrow because it's going to be really different than it was the day before. No day is the same. In my position, no game is the same. There's a great unknown, but you're not necessarily carrying the burdens that so many others do from their field. It's a great way to be passionate about something, and feel like your life is a joy as opposed to a weight. I've been blessed for 50 years to feel that way professionally. It's been
you're
great.
Engaged. You are engaged in your life. You're absolutely 100% engaged. You're not on the sidelines. You're in the game, and you're playing to the very best of your ability. And we thank you, because we want people to utilize Nutmeg TV and come in here and edit their sports packages or news packages or any kind of their content. Get some experience in front of the camera. Take a camera out. Shoot some video. Learn about the background, because some people don't want to be in front of the camera. Some people.
I would say this, Johnny. My favorite part of being in Binghamton, New York, was not the anchoring at all. It was going on a Friday and shooting high school football and seeing the football actually be in the lens and land in the receiver's hands. There was, I'm telling you, there was so much gratification from that, or watching the basketball guard shoot the ball, have that ball zoom out a little bit and see it go in the net. Or especially hockey, which is a real difficult sport to shoot. Again, the intuition to kind of have been an athlete, know where the ball may be going, come back, stick what then was a videotape into a machine and say, there it is, and it's actually in the right color. I got as much joy out of that. And if you're in this field or want to get in the field, take advantage of a situation like this. It's here. There's no judging. Nobody's telling you you're doing it right or wrong. And ask questions of people that are there. It's a really neat and cool field.
That's great. And thank you so much
My
for
pleasure,
spending
John.
time with us.
Thank you.
And all the best success.
Thank you very much.